Welcome everybody to our session on the art of simplicity, how a complex multi-billion-dollar program was managed and delivered to optimize performance. Brief legal slide. This presentation may contain forward-looking statements, so please take action accordingly. Hi everyone, my name is James Melser. I'm a member of the commercial leadership team here at Smartsheet. Today, we're lucky enough to be hearing from two guest speakers, both of whom have a really fascinating case study to share relating to the New South Wales Department of Communities and Justice Prison Bed Capacity Program. Michael Ayrton, Executive Director from the New South Wales Department of Communities and Justice, and Danny Liston, Technical Director at business management consultancy Onto It. Michael is a senior executive with both government and private sector experience who specializes in using program management systems and processes to execute on organizational strategy and drive tangible business outcomes. Danny specializes in improving project, program, and business outcomes using digital tools with a background in project management. They're going to give you a big picture view and take you through how a very large-scale, complex, multi-billion-dollar program was managed and delivered to optimize performance. I won't say too much more here and let them do the talking, but before we jump into it, I did want to thank both of you for being part of our event today. We're delighted to have you with us. Without further ado, let's move right into it. Danny and Michael, over to you.
Thank you very much, James. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you a little bit about some of the experiences that we've had with this program and the way that we're able to use Smartsheet along the way to assist with the delivery of that. One of the things that I wanted to start off with is just talking a little bit about this as being really quite a unprecedented sort of program, certainly within the corrections domain within Australia, and probably is very few programs of this scale and scope that would occur within this space across the world. So you've got a bit of data up on the screen there that gives you a bit of information about what's been done during the course of this. But in essence, what happened here was that, like many jurisdictions across the world, New South Wales was experiencing a huge increase in the prisoner population. And the population was increasing so rapidly that the existing prison infrastructure that existed in the network was unable to cope with that increase. And it really got to quite a crisis point where the entire justice system was at risk of shutting down, because if police arrested anybody and needed to, incarcerate them, there'd be nowhere for them to be able to go. The government invested very significantly in a very large program to try and fix that problem. And in essence, what we've done is we've delivered 20 projects over the last 4 years as part of the prison bed program. And a lot of those are very large. They would probably range from about $50 million to $200 million each in terms of those projects. And I suppose what we're sharing with you today is how we went about doing that, and particularly from a program management perspective, some of the systems and processes and tools that we found it necessary to put in place to assist us in terms of trying to achieve those outcomes. So one of the other things I want to talk about briefly now is some of the benefits that we're able to achieve through the delivery of this program. And what you'll find listed on the screen there is a list of awards that the program has won as a result of some of the projects that we've been able to deliver. And one of the other key things that you'll see listed there is actually a snapshot from one of our Smartsheet reports, which is a dashboard that we've created for tracking all of the different benefits to be delivered by the program along the way. So we've got 7 major benefits and multiple metrics that we're using to try and measure the outcomes and the effects that we've been able to achieve through the delivery of this program. And as you can see, they include things like increasing the capacity to actually manage the number of inmates within prison safely, through to being able to improve video conferencing outcomes, having fit-for-purpose infrastructure that supports rehabilitation and reducing recidivism outcomes, reducing the extent to which we have to move people between facilities, and a range of social benefits as well in terms of the jobs that have been created along the way and other sorts of things like that. So it's been quite a complex program, and I think that's really where we wanted to talk to you today about the role of Smartsheet in terms of doing that. We had a lot of significant challenges to overcome, and so we might look at sort of exploring a few of those in terms of some of the issues that we were dealing with so that we could deliver this program. And one of the very first ones was that given the way the program came into being and the urgency with which it was set up, we found ourselves in a position where the department was really trying to deliver this massive program without any existing capability in place to support that. So, I mean, we mentioned here that we didn't have any existing delivery capability within the department at the time. And so a whole infrastructure division had to be set up from scratch to be able to deliver these multiple parallel projects. But the other thing that we learnt was that our previous experience in terms of developing new correctional facilities had been to do it one at a time. And there might be several years in between. And we had never, ever tried to do something of this scale with multiple projects in parallel and governing and trying to coordinate the huge range of activities that had to go with this. And from a client perspective, Corrective Services and Justice just didn't have the internal experience around project and program management on that scale to support a program like this. And one of the things that we found pretty early on, because we actually sort of started this project really quickly. Some of these prisons had actually started the construction before the design was even complete. That was how quickly we had to try and get these things up and running because we were going to run out of beds. But in terms of all the different project teams being set up and contractors being brought in to start the construction side of things, we had to quickly put in place a program management office to try and support those projects and provide the systems and processes and the reporting to our board to support the program along the way. And we just didn't have those sorts of things in place. We started out with a lot of the standard tools like Excel and Project, and we're trying to use other existing things that existed, that already happened to be within the department. But we quickly learnt that it was just taking up too much time and effort, and we had to try and streamline that and find a better way. From our perspective, from the government client side, one of the things that we decided to do was to go out to the market and specifically approach somebody who had experience with delivering large projects like this, but also experience with implementing the sorts of business systems and tools that would support our PMO functions. And I suppose that's the point at which we engaged onto it, to have a bit of a look at some of the systems that we were using and how we might be able to improve those to deliver better outcomes. And that's the point that I think I should let Danny talk about that experience.
Thank you, Michael. So as Michael mentioned, we got involved at a very critical time in the program. Essentially, the first few projects had already been started, and actually the first couple of projects were called the rapid builds, in that they were specifically set up to address the critical shortfall in capacity. And so Michael has mentioned that some of these projects were in construction before the design had been completed. And with the selection of project managers, project directors, and external consultants who were brought in to deliver these projects, they often were relying on their own processes, their own templates, some of which were very, very mature, but there wasn't that consistency across all projects. So that process development to drive consistency just wasn't set up from the outset. So when we got involved, one of the first things we looked at was just aligning that process, and really setting up the PMO to look across all projects, get consistency across how the project delivery process were running and how reporting was going to be deployed to drive that consistency. A few of the other challenges that we found when we first got involved with the program was the over-reliance on, I've mentioned legacy tools and systems here, but because there wasn't a consolidated project management platform, it was, your typical Microsoft ecosystem of Excel and Word and Microsoft Project, but again, inconsistency between how they were used across different projects. And the PMO and reporting function within the program had a lot of work to do every month to bring together all of that data and get consistency in reporting to the various senior stakeholders and boards. So we had a lot of manual processes which were difficult to audit as well. So some of the solutions, or actually the process that we undertook to resolve some of these challenges, where we first looked at a full review of all project processes. What tools are being used across all projects? What templates? What's working really well? We did a bit of a gap analysis across maybe where some things are actually missing completely, and what's really the best of breed toolkit that we can assemble from existing processes. In parallel to that, we looked at a selection of PPM tools that might suit the program's needs. So a modern cloud-based project management toolkit that could essentially unite everyone in a single platform and in a single set of templates and tools. So we developed process guides to kind of consolidate all of these processes, not just your standard project delivery processes, but also some specific processes related to external reporting, to various government bodies, and also specific ones to do with the mechanisms of construction, such as defects management, or even some of the specifics of working in these operational environments. We documented some processes related to just escorts and the basically guards that were going to be escorting project team members as they were going on site. So we had a lot of intricate processes that we documented and then rolled out to the wider group. Now, the key reason Smartsheet was chosen, there was actually a number of them, and we looked at a wide selection of PPM tools. But because there was already processes established, some of which were working really well, and primarily they were working in Excel, we found that the ease at which Smartsheet could be transitioned to was fantastic. It's an Excel-like environment, as you know. A lot of the really good templates that were being used were able to be immediately set up in Smartsheet, and it was immediately familiar to people that were already running projects. The second one was the auditability. So without a really good file control system, we found that there was inconsistency among version control and things like that, which was completely alleviated in moving to Smartsheet. And just having all of that activity tracked per sheet, being able to see who's viewing things, who's making changes, that really lent itself to improving the governance of the program. The third one was cost effectiveness. We really couldn't believe that the platform allowed free users to essentially do everything they needed to do once the toolkit was set up for them, and basically run projects without needing to pay for a user license. So it became a bit of a no-brainer in terms of value for money. And then the additional collaborative features that Smartsheet allowed us to realize in everyone using the single platform, in being able to run workflows to automate some of the processes, and then simple things like just tagging people in comments and mentioning people and having them automatically alerted to where they might need to input data. So the transition from that kind of legacy environment where there was inconsistency across projects, The reporting was a lot of copying and pasting from documentation and various templates into, say, a Word report. That was actually quite a step change for the program. So we set up a full project toolkit per project, and added a lot of additional templates that were previously not really formalized and were in use for some projects, but not others. So those included things like capturing metrics for contractor safety statistics and social metrics. The full cost management suite of templates that was in Excel was a very easy transition into Smartsheet. The scheduling, which was previously done on Microsoft Project, we found obviously that was quite easy to do in Smartsheet as well, and also gave us the ability to do critical path and driving path and some of the slightly more advanced scheduling techniques, which we could realize in Smartsheet. So that the project toolkit was quite an easy transition. But I think what was most beneficial was the speed at which we could generate reports, and having that reporting pretty much automated, in that as long as the project team members were keeping their information up to date, actively managing the project in the platform, inputting risks, the monthly reporting process was reduced from about a 2-week period down to a number of days, so 2 to 3 days. And it meant that we had some really interesting mechanisms that allowed a PM to just, have their, say, 100 risks in a risk register, and then tag the two or three or four risks that were critical to be reported on for that month, and had a process through the workflows by which the project directors could then see those risks that had been escalated, could approve them to essentially become part of the project report, which we used fully in Smartsheet. Used the dashboard functionality within Smartsheet. So the key benefits that we realized in deploying Smartsheet, I think number one was efficiency. I've mentioned the reporting timelines and how that was dramatically improved. That was really a key one for me, and I think a lot of the uptake from the project delivery team members, a lot of the benefits that they saw were really in their day-to-day working and the efficiency of everyone being on a single platform, everyone having a similar toolkit. The collaboration was another huge one. So we had not just the project delivery team members, but external stakeholders, stakeholders from the client side, which was Michael's team in corrective services, and a range of other collaborators and stakeholders, from consultants to contractors, that were all able to work in a single environment. An example of that would be, say, the change management process, where we had a really quite a complex workflow process for change management. And we were able to get everyone's input on those change requests, and have them essentially step through the workflow process all within Smartsheet, and eventually be reviewed and approved and implemented. Really cut down on the email traffic, and really ensured that everyone was across that process. And the third benefit, and a big one for me that I saw, once everyone became aware of how Smartsheet functioned as a platform, and what it could do, essentially using some of the workflow processes, or being able to do reports or dashboards, we really saw a lot of innovation from the project teams. So while the original toolkit we set up was really focused on project delivery, we started to see project team members say, oh, I think I could use this for a specific process that I have on a project, like this defects tracking that we're coming to the end of a certain project. We've got a lot of defects we need to manage and control. Maybe I could try Smartsheet out for basically implementing that process. And what we found was they would implement it. It would work out the kinks, and then we would roll it out to the rest of the program. So we did a lot of like specialist processes all within Smartsheet, and even Michael has touched on the benefits realization tracking piece that was a function of his program management office, and that was fully done through Smartsheet as well. So I think once the broader team understood how the platform worked, we started to see a lot of light bulb moments where people decided, oh, maybe I could do this and run this process more efficiently, all within the Smartsheet platform. So as I mentioned,
Thanks,
the solution provided a significant amount of benefits, and Michael's going to walk us through some of the kind of broader benefits that we realized through Smartsheet.
Thank you very much, Danny. I think that one of the key things that Danny outlined there is the range of uses that we found for the tool once we'd implemented it. I think given the scale and the scope of the program, the stakeholders that we had involved, particularly at board level that we were reporting to, the ability to provide those stakeholders with confidence that the program was being delivered effectively and that they were getting the outcomes that they needed, really came down to how well we could report that information through the level of transparency and visibility that we could provide to them around what was happening at both a project and an overall program level. And pulling all of that data together in an integrated way and presenting it in a simple format that made it easy to digest for those stakeholders was a really important part of what we needed to do in the program. And I think that the work that Onto It assisted us with around the reporting solution in particular really helped to do that. I think on the back of that, Prison Beds is coming towards the end of the program. We've basically successfully completed those 20 projects, and we'll be finished in another few months. But a lot of people that we work with across the broader department have sort of seen the way that we've used these tools, and particularly where they're involved in project and program management themselves. They've started picking up Smartsheet as a tool that they also want to use either instead of what they were working with previously, or to supplement perhaps other systems that they've already got in place. And some of those examples are listed here. So when our program finishes, the infrastructure and assets branch within our department are responsible for the ongoing asset management. Plus they also deliver other projects in other parts of the department. And they've recently sort of leveraged the work that we've done in this program to put in place their own PPM tools using Smartsheet. And again, they've reached out to Onto It to assist them with doing that. And again, a lot of that was done based on the success of how they'd seen the tool being used in our program. Our offender services and programs area has now basically decided that they want Smartsheet to be their preferred PPM tool. They've got a range of often quite small projects that are being delivered in multiple locations across the department, and they've set up a set of guidelines on the intranet for staff to use and to sort of follow in terms of how to use Smartsheet within their division. And then governance and continuous improvement is an area within our department that looks after the contract management for privately operated prisons. And they've found a way to use Smartsheet as a tool to help streamline their contract administration and contract management processes, to monitor performance and KPIs and use that as part of their regular monthly reviews of those contracts. So as Danny alluded to before, I think once the platform's in place, people often find flexible ways that they can turn it to their own advantage and use it for other things. On the back of that, our enterprise PMO is now looking at Smartsheet alongside some of the other PPM tools that had been favoured previously, and looking at it being sort of used more and more across the department as well. So I think one of the things that has been a lesson for us is that one of the real benefits that we got out of using Smartsheet as part of our solution was that it was simple to use. Users found it familiar. They didn't have to spend a lot of time training or learning how to use it, and they could quickly and easily apply it and then get back to focusing on the work of what it was that they were actually delivering and the projects that they were managing. And on that basis, it's something that's worked really well for us. And so hopefully working through this case study with you has provided you with a little bit of information about about how we've been able to use that for our program.
Wow, thank you both. That was really interesting and really appreciate you sharing your experience with us. I believe we have time for a couple of brief questions, so I'd like to dive into those. Michael, starting with you, when you were analyzing the existing PPM tools within the Department of Communities and Justice versus Smartsheet, can you talk us through that decision-making process in a little bit more detail?
Yeah, sure, James. I think like lots of large government organisations in particular, one of the things that they often tend to do when they're trying to improve the overall PPM capability for staff within, such a large organisation, particularly when there's such a diversity in the types of projects that are being managed, is to look at relying very heavily on a tool set to help provide some structure and some consistency with the way they're being delivered, and to report that information through to the relevant governance forums. And that was the same with us. Our Justice Department, as it was then, had settled on a sort of particular tool that was preferred. And that was being rolled out and basically mandated for all projects to use. Unfortunately, particularly in situations where your projects or your program don't necessarily fit nicely inside the parameters of the box that's been, sort of designed, sometimes, sort of a square peg just doesn't go into a round hole. And we were finding that that was the case for us. And we needed a different approach. Otherwise, it was going to be a lot more work for our people to be able to use the tool that was being mandated. The other thing, I think, in my experience that I've often found, is often these tools originate with the IT division. And I think that's because project management is probably often more mature in that part of the business. And sometimes the tools and the way they're implemented work really well for IT, but they don't necessarily work as well for other types of projects. And I think that was our experience here as well. One of the things that we did when we reviewed the tools that we were using, looking at how we could simplify that, looking at some of the potential benefits we could get from Smartsheet by piloting it with a couple of, sort of small solutions first, was that it could be used as a platform and easily tailored to meet the needs of our projects and program, rather than the other way around, us having to try and change our processes to meet the needs of the tool. So that was our experience.
Yep. Totally makes sense. I think we see a lot of our customers today who are looking for tools that are adaptable and solutions that can kind of meet the pace of change that they're experiencing in their business. So appreciate the additional detail there. Danny, maybe switching over to you, quick question. Our customers often require support to effectively deploy Smartsheet in a large scale initiative like this. Can you maybe tell us a little bit more about what was involved with implementing the Smartsheet solution for the prison bed capacity program?
Yeah, thanks, James. That was a really interesting one because, as I said, we got involved not at the outset of the program, but after the first few projects had been up and running. And so we set about looking at what's the most critical element to get right first and get everyone on board with. And that was in true project fashion, it's typically costs. So we set up first the cost management process in Smartsheet, and it was quite, obviously large, multi-million-dollar projects, quite a complex cost management process involving, your budget sheets and a lot of linkages between that budget to things like purchase order registers, invoicing, variations, change requests. And so it was quite mature in Excel. And so transitioning that into Smartsheet was quite easy, I guess, and we were able to get people on board with it quite quickly. In that, the look and feel didn't change, the operation of it didn't change, but as soon as we did, we were able to suggest some quality of life improvements that Smartsheet was able to allow us to do, such as simple collaboration things. We ran some real basic workflows for flagging where contingency might be getting close to being exceeded and things like that. So once we kind of won support of the broader project teams in getting their cost management system right in Smartsheet, the rest of the rollout in bringing in scheduling, bringing in risks and issues, and all the various other project management facets evolved quite organically, I would say. Once we had kind of brought people on board and said, look, it looks and feels exactly as you have been using and the tools you have been using, but we can do a lot of things that you previously haven't been doing. And I think importantly, your reporting is going to be far more streamlined by using this tool, because essentially you don't have to think about a separate report. By simply using the platform and operating wholly in the platform for your day-to-day project management, your reporting is automated. And we had some processes involving reviewing of what was going to actually become the final reports, but there was no copying and pasting or providing a separate report. It became a very streamlined process. So the implementation was kind of piecemeal, but once we had won them over in terms of getting the costs right, the rest kind of fell in line quite organically.
Yep, great. Yeah, I think that's similar to what we see with a lot of our customers who take kind of an iterative approach and really leverage that flexibility of the platform to kind of accommodate the needs of their program as it changes over time. So really appreciate the extra insight there. So that's all we have time for today. On behalf of Smartsheet, I'd like to say a big thank you again to Michael and Danny for taking the time to be a part of our event and for providing their insight. I'm sure everyone tuned into this session has taken something away from hearing your story. Once again, it's super impressive to see what you both have accomplished. Reminder, I think on our next slide, to check out our Learning Center if you haven't already done so, and encourage you to interact with our community or even think about becoming Smartsheet certified. And that brings us to the end of our session. Thanks, everyone, and enjoy the rest of the event.